Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about the White Sand graphic novels by Brandon Sanderson, which is part of the Cosmere. So, Sanderson has mentioned that this is essentially the first novel he ever wrote that he took, and by teaming up with Dynamite, he they adopted it into a graphic novel form. And honestly, I can see that. It has all the hallmarks of early Sanderson in terms of what he his favorite themes that he likes to approach in books. And let's unpack it. So what is White Sand even about? The Sandmasters of the Dayside of Taldane are an insular caste of people. They're learning to harness the power of sand by the use of ribbons of sand. And the more ribbons you control, the stronger you are. But then a bloody attack essentially wipes them all out, leaving only Kenton, who is one of the weakest sandmasters ever, to suddenly take charge of his to suddenly get thrust into a leadership position. That by itself is a problem, but then the political opponents of the Sand Mastery cast, they see this as a sign that it's time to completely abolish that entire system, as the Sandmasters are viewed largely as a drain on society that don't contribute anything back to it. So Kenton now has 2 weeks in which he has to attempt to convince this leadership council that Sandmasters can be valuable to society, or they'll be legally disbanded and can no longer be they can no longer legally exist, essentially. So that's pretty much what this story is about. Kenton sets out on a mission to kind of do like it's a very politically driven story, with Kenton setting out to essentially come make deals with these the different members of the leadership councils, finding out ways in which Sand Mastery can contribute essentially. And a lot of that ties into the way that the type of person that Kenton is as in terms of his personality. He is the weakest of the Sandmasters in that he can really only control one ribbon, but because of the fact that he's so weak, he's creative. He's very creative in the way that he uses his power, where most Sandmasters, they typically just went for the brute force approach because they were all able to, like, to be a Sandmaster, you typically controlled 15 ribbons and more. So Kenton's creativity and ingenuity is something that is now necessary to save his people, because they have this religious program that they're facing, and Kenton specifically, as he's essentially as the new leader, he's become a symbol of the ability of the Sandmasters to survive. So he's targeted by a program basically. He has to figure out how to save his people from essentially being legally excised from society. And on top of that, he has to band together and unify the few remaining Sandmasters who survived, many of whom are and they're already facing a schism within their own ranks, because many of the Sandmasters who did survive, they prefer to there's another candidate essentially for leadership of the Sandmasters. So all of that is going on over the course of this novel, and the stories, they interweave and they intertwine, and the different things come into play essentially. So to say Kenton has a lot to deal with is a lot. Like I mentioned, this book has the trademarks of early Sanderson, and those storylines are where you see it. Like it's very politically driven. A lot of it is discussions and relationships and mysteries and that kind of thing. Then one of the core pillars of early Sanderson is religion, and the way that factors into this book is not only do you have the pogrom against the religious pogrom against the Sandmasters. But there's another character who we see a lot of, and she's the senior tracked ace who she is essentially assigned by the profession by the council member who is in charge of think of them as like law enforcement. She's assigned by that council member to protect Kenton, because of the fact that he's the last he's the current leader of the Sandmasters, and he's in such high jeopardy. But the thing is, she's a deeper the tract. She's a deeply religious person, and she considers Kenton's Sandmastery to effectively be an abomination against her god. So her story is all about her coming to grips with the fact that she has to do something so despicable to her, so anathema to her being in protecting Kenton, when in her heart she really wants these assassins to succeed and to just kill him. And she has a lot of inner conflict there. And so those are like the two major POVs. The third character who plays a big role over the course of the story, but who kind of has a lesser role at the same time, is the Duchess Chris, which is if you've read more Cosmere stuff, you'll be very familiar with Chris. She this is Chris before she became more relevant on the stage of the Cosmere. You can say as a world hopper. This is her, like, think of it as like her early days. In this we see her as she's a duchess from the dark side of the planet. So this planet is divided into day side and dark side. The Duchess Chris is from the dark side, and her kingdom is facing their own political challenges, and she came to the day side to find these Sandmasters and to figure out a way to recruit them, to bring them back to the dark side with her and let them help her in her conflict. Now, through Chris's let's call it her POV, that's where the majority of the world building, the magic, and all these things kind of get unpacked, because she, like, we see the scholarly tendencies that allow her to, that eventually lead to her becoming a world hopper. She is extremely fascinated with just how Sandmastery works and these kind of things, because she has to figure out a way to kind of get that to work on her side of the planet. We get quite a few tantalizing hints at what her side of the planet is look like. It sounds like they're quite a bit more advanced technologically, and in addition to that, it sounds like they have access to a very different type of magic, which I'm expecting we'll probably find out more in the inevitable White Sand sequels that we'll get at some point in the future. But yeah, like, Chris mainly serves as a way to kind of unpack the setting and the world, and some of the other mysteries that are going on. Like, she has her own story that plays out over the course of this novel. It's a bit convenient in the way that she kind of investigates one of these mysteries surrounding one of the rulers of this city, and it's a bit too convenient in the way that it meshes in with her personal life. But aside from all of that, like, she was fascinating to read about, because she is where we get to kind of peel back the curtain on this world and find out more about this strange planet and how it works and how it functions and that kind of thing. So those are like the main characters. They and like I've mentioned multiple times over the course of the video, that's like the three pillars of early Sanderson. Extremely political driven story with a cast of characters who you might or might not like. Then there's the religious component, which is heavy and very much on display here. And then finally the magical component, which we get in the form of Chris. What else can I really say about White Sand? Well, this video is specifically about the graphic novel. I have the omnibus edition, and one thing, like I'm not equipped really to talk too much about to really talk about what makes a good graphic novel or not. I haven't read that very many. One thing I did find jarring is that there's not consistency in terms of the art. Like the art, it's quite clear that there were multiple different artists working on this on these stories, and no attempt was made to kind of have like a consistent art style. Like everyone kind of brought their own way of doing things. So that may or may not work for you. I kind of found it a bit jarring because you would have on in one section you would have like this intricate kind of art, the intricate detailed kind of art, and then practically in the next few pages you would have like an art style that's almost flat, like almost 2D in the way that it's rendered. So it worked for and against it in a way. But as to the story itself and the way that it unfolds over the course of the graphic novel, I think it was like the adaptation was handled pretty well, because one of the things we did get access to in the Arcanum Unbounded collection was a snippet of the White Sand prose that I guess fueled this graphic novel. And from reading that and reading the graphic novel, the prose goes almost toe for toe with what we see in the graphic novel. Like there's really not that much that was left out. So I think in terms of adaptation of whatever that initial story was that Sanderson had, it was done really well. I do know that he did complete work on the prose version of White Sand, which is probably going to drop sometime maybe next year or whatever. So at that point we can probably compare it to the graphic novel. But yeah, like all in all, in terms of for Sanderson's story, like I said, it harkens more to his earlier stuff. So like, if you, depending on how you feel like about like Warbreak and Elantris, you may have similar feelings about this particular story. For me, I just kind of, it was kind of meh to me. Like, it was okay. It did what it had to do, but it's certainly not among my favorite of his stuff. But still interesting to read because it's Sanderson at the end of the day, right? If you're a fan of his stories, you get pretty much what you want here. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about White Sand, the graphic novels at least. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.